Coming up on Two and a Half Geeks, we're going to be talking about the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. We'll talk about a weird headline from Woz talking about Apple running Android. That sounds weird. A Sony Vaio all-in-one, and a whole lot more.
It rocked in the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit. Processing power, I kind of understand this.
Hey, welcome back to Two and a Half Geeks. I'm Ayaz Akhtar alongside Dave Altavilla and Marco Chiappetta. How are you guys doing? Let's ask Marco first. How are you?
I'm doing all right. A little tired. My house is encased in like 2 feet of snow right now. It's freezing. The weather has not been great here in the Northeast, but otherwise I cannot complain. How about you?
I'm doing really well. I don't have any of this igloo syndrome. I'm in sunny California. It's always nice. The biggest complaints people have had, oh, it rained for 3 days.
Oh, boo-hoo.
We had a drought. It actually was very necessary and nice to have the rain. How are you, Dave? How is good old Massachusetts?
Well, I too live in a nice fortress, as you probably can't tell because you can't see out the window, but we've got probably 1.5 feet of snow at this juncture. It's been a long time since we've seen you, and it's good to see you again, and I'm doing just dandy here.
Oh, that's right. I am now CNET.com's Ayaz Akhtar. That's where I work. That's what I do. And we'll be talking about all kinds of fun stuff from hothardware.com. So if you've never seen this show, you are very confused. But don't worry. We're going to explain what's happening right now. If you figure Hot Hardware talks about knitting, it's always about knitting with this show. We're dead on that.
Stuff like that. Yep.
Well, let's totally go off subject of knitting. Let's talk about the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. This is their flagship ThinkPad. Is that right, Dave?
It is. It is. They're well, I mean, there's a bunch of different ThinkPads in the that business portfolio that Lenovo brings out, but the ThinkPad X1 Carbon is certainly one of their top shelf models. Absolutely.
So this one, it's called Carbon because it uses carbon fiber for its body. So you guys got to try this out. I know it comes in a crazy high-resolution screen. What did you find when you tested it out?
Yeah, high-resolution screens certainly are getting more commonplace these days. And actually, here's the machine now. I'm going to kind of get it up into the camera for you so you can see it a little bit better. Hopefully, we won't glare out too much. But this is by far, I'm going to go right on the limb and say this right now. This is by far my favorite notebook that I have ever used. And that's saying quite a bit because I've used quite a few of them. This is the revamp, the 2014 revamp of the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. And you're absolutely right. It's built with a carbon fiber filled polymer. And actually this time around, we actually took a look at the previous gen model back in 2012. This time around for 2014, the skins are much more rigid. However, it's actually a few ounces lighter than the previous gen. And it's just a really, really well-built machine. It also, as you mentioned, sports a 14-inch 2560 by 1440 high-resolution WQHD panel, IPS display with about 300 nits of brightness. And so fantastic display, really nice traditional Lenovo-style keyboard. And really good hinges. It's not a yoga style design where the hinges fully articulate 360 degrees, but it actually swings open 180 degrees fully flat to the surface that the notebook might be resting on. So you've got that going on. And then Lenovo actually took it up a notch and added a strip, an LCD strip above the keyboard where the function row usually is, the function keys. And now it's an adaptive electroluminescent strip of adaptive function keys. So pretty cool design, powered by Intel's Haswell, 4th generation Haswell, dual core i5 4200U processor, 8 gig of RAM and a 128 gig SSD. So it flies and it's built fantastic. And I hate to gush, but I love it.
Now, I tried out the old 2012 version. And if I remember right, the thing that disappointed me most about the X1 Carbon Touch, that's what they called it, I think, at the time, was the screen. It had this kind of, it's like they slapped a digitizer on top of the glass. There was this weird lag. As I've seen with the newest one, it seems like that issue was gone. How did you find that screen? Because if you're talking over HD as a display, it's got to be responsive if you're going to have a good experience.
Yeah, I actually have been working with this laptop for a little over a week now and putting it through its paces in terms of standard benchmarks, even some gaming benchmarks. Believe it or not, it will handle some casual gaming. But in terms of touch response, Windows 8.1 loaded on this machine with touch, very responsive. No lag whatsoever that I could see. Pinch and zoom and scroll and all that good stuff, swiping in and out of apps. Not a problem at all with the Windows 8.1 modern UI interface. One thing I did notice, the touchpad area, not quite as fluid as, dare I say, a MacBook or a MacBook Air. That multi-gesture pinch and zoom, for example, in a web browser on the touchpad, it works fine with the Windows interface, but just browsing web pages and zooming in and out with the touchpad on that wasn't quite as fluid. On the screen, you could certainly get that response. On the web page, you didn't see any lag at all. But pretty darn near perfect in terms of, a notebook and what I look for. Number one, I really like a 14-inch form factor. They actually get a 14-inch screen and really a 13.3-inch form factor. Really nice edge-to-edge glass display with a thin black bezel underneath the glass, framing the panel. It's just built really well, very responsive. And the only gotcha that made me, take one step from saying this is the perfect laptop, it's almost my perfect laptop, is that it's missing an SD card slot. The last generation version had an SD card slot. I wish it had that. It's just a convenience thing. You don't need to go plugging in a card reader anywhere. But other than that, pretty darn near perfect for me anyways.
That sounds like an unusual thing to be missing, especially for a professional machine. That's how the ThinkPad line usually is. I know there's a bit of controversy when it comes to the keyboard. There's a split delete backspace key. For those of you who use Racerhead, they've removed the buttons below, so the touchpad's just one large touchpad with the other responsive areas. I still think it's a killer machine. From what I've seen and what I've read, it seems like it's pretty hard to beat, but it comes at a premium price, right?
Yeah, it is. It's the model that we tested with a 128 gig SSD, 8 gig of RAM, and a Core i5 4200U. $1,579 is what you can build that configuration on Lenovo's site. So it's a little bit higher end, but that's with the 2560 by 1440 display. If you wanted to scale down to the 1600 by 900 display, I certainly wouldn't. You can save a few pennies there for sure. But you know what? You mentioned that backspace and delete key, that combination key. I actually found I tripped over that at first because I was used to the previous gen model and the full-size backspace key that's up in the top right corner of that. And it took me just a few days before my pinky, which is always, when you're reaching for that backspace key, my pinky was, just a little bit less of a reach actually because the backspace is closer and delete's a little bit further out from there. So it's not that bad. You can adapt to that. I think it's really just a usage model thing that once you get up to speed with it, and once you're, banging around on that keyboard, you're going to love it.
There we go. We got Dave being a Lenovo keyboard apologist. You can send your hate if you want to.
I'm telling you my personal experience. I can apologize if you like, but
no one has ever had to apologize for a Lenovo keyboard. That's like a strong point.
Well said, Marco. Well said.
Lenovo, they've kept the IBM brand, which, at least its actual style of keyboard alive. They've done a great job with that. So far, so good. They didn't screw up something that worked really well. Let's talk about a budget graphics cards, not a graphics card that is. Normally, we talk about some really expensive gear, and I'm always amazed about the prices of these graphics cards because they're about the same cost as a PC for me. When we look at this, Marco, you've got to look at the AMD Radeon R7 265. Now, this is only about $150, but the first thing I think of after doing this show for so many years, it seems like, is like, it can't be good. It's $150. It's just, forget it. It's going to run like one HD stream?
Come on now.
No, it actually can be good for $150. Let me just quickly show it to you. So that's this is the particular Sapphire card I got to test. Now, let me take a step back before we talk about the 265 because the naming is confusing on this card. When AMD launched their new Hawaii GPU in the R9 290X and 290, that was sort of the first card in a whole new lineup of cards with this new R branding. So you have the R7 series, which is their mainstream cards, and the R9 series, which is the higher end cards. So right now you have the R9 290 and 290X, the R9 270X, the R9 280 falls in between those, and then in the R7 series you have the 250, 250X, 260, 260X, and now the 265. However, the R7 265 is most similar to the R9 270X, which itself was based on an old GPU. That card was most similar to the Radeon HD 7870. So this card, the R7 265, is basically a slightly pared down R9 270X, which puts it sort of in the category of a Radeon HD 7850, though it is a little faster. The memory's clocked a little higher, and so is the GPU. So in terms of its specs, it's got a 1024 stream processors clocked, and the GPU is clocked at up to 925 megahertz. You have 2 gigs of GDDR5 memory on a 256-bit interface clocked at an effective data rate of 5.6 gigabits per second. So you're looking at a fairly powerful card for 150. Now, what AMD also did by introducing this one is drop the price on the 260X. So that card, which was also decent, is now only 120 bucks. So for 149, this R7 265 performs right about on par, slightly better than a GeForce GTX 650 Ti Boost, which is really a great card if your resolution is at, say, 1080p or below.
Now, you were saying that it seems most similar to the 270, which seems like it's a bit old already. Doesn't this seem like you're getting older technology at $150? I know it's a not a discounted price, but it's a low price. But it seems like it's older technology.
Don't apologize now.
It is older technology. It's technically a rebrand. It's using the same GPU as AMD's previous generation, but when you look at the graphics card space, because DirectX hasn't really changed all that much the last few years, if you release a new high-end chip, yeah, I mean, you could redesign some mainstream parts, but why do it? Just lower the price of your previous gen and drop everything down the stack, which is what AMD has done. So to get this kind of performance at 159 bucks, no way that was possible when this chip was first introduced. You can do it now because they have a new flagship and they've really brought everything else down market. And to unify their naming, that's why you see that it's not technically a rebrand, because it's not exactly the same specs, but you have a unified naming convention across the whole product stack now.
How was the actual performance of the device? I mean, if it's budget, it sounds like it's just because it's older technology doesn't mean it'll be incompetent. How was the performance for things like gaming?
Performance is pretty good. I tend to run my tests at the most taxing settings possible for 2 reasons. I want to be able to use the tests for a long span of time, so readers coming by the site can maybe go back a couple of months and compare an older card to a newer card, and I'll have the same tests because they're so taxing. But I also want to be able to compare, the latest flagship stuff to the mainstream stuff. So in the highest quality settings that I use, and I'm using some, fairly hardcore games like Crysis 3, Metro Last Light, really extreme graphics in those games in terms of fidelity versus other titles right now. And at the highest res that I tested at 2560 by 16, not really playable in anything but previous gen titles. But at 1080p, at 1920 by 1080, I tested at 1920 by 12. Just about everything is playable. You can hit that 30 frames per second mark with max quality settings. Take things down a notch and you can get perfectly fluid frame rates in basically every title at 1080p or below. So it's definitely a worthwhile card for 150 bucks.
On to the world of news. There's a weird headline floating around. Steve Wozniak, he's an Apple co-founder. You might have heard of him. He just likes to say weird stuff. Recently mentioned something about he thinks Apple should be introducing its own Android-powered phone just to pretty much own that market because they could if they wanted to. Dave, what's up with this?
Number one, I want to get this right out in the open. We love Woz. Woz is a brilliant man. He's a free-thinking, absolutely just, outgoing guy. I mean, you can't really blame him for some of the stuff he says sometimes, and this one's definitely a little out there, right? Because everybody's always sticking a mic or a camera in this guy's face. I mean, it's just he's always on. And Woz gracious man that he is, always, accepts the invitation to talk with folks. And so, he's a real down to earth guy. And as a matter of fact, funny, we should mention this, but he's actually a Facebook friend of Marco's, believe it or not. That's how Woz is. He's just an open kind of guy. And he came right out and tossed this, sort of pulled the pin and tossed the grenade in and said, yeah, Apple should, Apple could, if they wanted to. Our headline's a little bit sensational, we should say. It says, Woz thinks Apple should make an Android phone. What he said was, there's nothing that would keep Apple out of the Android market as a secondary phone market. Wozniak told The Wired in an interview, he said, we could compete very well. People like the precious looks and the stylings and manufacturings that we do in our product compared to the other Android offerings, and we could play in two arenas at the same time. That's a whole lot, man. I mean, it jumps to a lot of assumptions that I think just wouldn't play in reality, frankly. I don't think you're ever going to see Apple step out beyond the iOS platform. I think the other thing you got to remember about Apple is that they make their bread and butter is in the high end. They do not make anything cheap, really. There's lower cost. Certainly, the iPhone 5C. There's some lower cost offerings. But really, if you look at Apple and their product portfolio over the course of history, it's about the premium brand experience. That's what they're all about. And so this would be a play that really would go away from that. And frankly, the iPhone 5C hasn't really done very well for them either, has it? Right? Competing in that mid-range to low-end market where Woz thinks perhaps an Android play might be possible. I think it's interesting. It's sort of a novel concept. I think certainly Apple could if they wanted to. I just don't think they ever will.
This reminds me of the days when you'd hear those rumors of, or at least, or those reporters yelling, hey, Microsoft should make their own version of Linux. It's like, yeah, they could. They don't want to, but they could. I mean, right. I don't know if it would make a difference to anything, actually, if they were going to bother to do this. It seems like that'd be potentially incompatibility issues would drive people nuts when it comes to an Android device that has an Apple on the back. Although, I mean, if you want Android, it's a very different kind of feel. But then again, OS 10 Unix, right? So, or is it BSD? Somebody help me with that one.
I mean, what you're really looking at here is
it was actually based on Next back in the day, but go ahead.
There you go. Yeah.
OS X came from the Next acquisition, Steve Jobs' other company, and evolved that OS. I think it was based on BSD, but go ahead.
No, you're talking about what's really the sort of the crux of the whole thing is that you're talking about three major silos that are now evolving, not silos, but brands that are evolving in the marketplace for devices. You've got Microsoft, you've got Apple, and you've got Google. Okay, and Google, by the way, with Chrome OS and Chromebooks and all that good stuff, and Google Apps, Google Docs, all that. I mean, they're going to be the next big force in devices as well, beyond obviously the Android ecosystem and just all their partners. But really, those three forces are just so autonomous and so competitive with each other. It's like I don't know what reality they could coexist in.
Where our actual reality is changing because Toshiba just bought OCZ. Now, if you've watched this show before, or you've ever been to hothardware.com, there's lots of coverage about OCZ because they make some really freaking awesome SSDs. So I was not expecting Toshiba to swoop in and buy them. What's the deal with that story?
Yeah, so OCZ Technology filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy at the end of the year, last year, and the deal became finalized right on through CES week, and it is now official. They are now they are a subsidiary of Toshiba, OCZ Technology Group, of subsidiary of Toshiba. And Marco took a look at the OCZ Vertex 460. I'll let him talk to that, the 240 gig SSD that OCZ just launched, the first product launch under that subsidiary. And but really what's interesting about this is that, so many folks, I mean, OCZ did very well, certainly over the past couple of years, especially with all of their acquisitions and with the new technology they introduced in SSDs, especially in the consumer space. when this came down, it was just like, wow, first they had this, sort of loan shark line of credit that they picked up at the end, and everybody was saying, geez, they're on their last leg, and then finally it happened. Well, what happened was Toshiba came in, bought them for pennies on the dollar, got a fantastic deal of IP, which includes not only OCZ's technologies, but Indelinx, the controller company that they bought, PLX, a serial switching company that OCZ acquired a few years back as well, Sanrad, which is an enterprise solid-state storage-based storage solution. Just a really nice portfolio of high-performance solid-state storage and serial switching technology that they got a really good deal for. And now, if you think about it, you put the two together, Toshiba, big, huge manufacturing workhorse for NAND flash technology, now coupled with OCZ, who's been very strong in serial switching and controllers. You put all that together, and certainly the brand and the channel presence that OCZ has in solid-state storage, I think it's a fantastic combination, and I can't wait to see what these guys come up with. When the two teams are really assimilated and merged together and working in unison, it should be fun.
We've seen a lot of consolidation in the business just in general. I mean, we've seen things with that happening before with hard drive companies, and now we've seen some weirder things happen in the news. Sony's going to be ending their production of PC manufacturing. I think they're selling it off to an investment group. But Marco, you've got, I guess this is going to be weird. It's going to be like a classic one day. One of the last, the last of breed, Sony Vaio all-in-one. It's kind of like a tablet, but it's also an all-in-one giant. It's actually meant to be a desktop. What's the proper way to explain this kind of category of PC? I guess all-in-one might be the closest one. But what do you got?
Yes, Sony actually calls it a mobile desktop, but it's more a mobile all-in-one is a better explanation. This sort of class of machine hit the market last year, and lots of people, they really didn't explain them properly. There were people trying to talk about these machines like it's just a big tablet, and they were trying to use it like a tablet and ridiculing the machines. And really, those tech editors that did that, those are the people that should be ridiculed. But that's a topic for another day. So really, it's an all-in-one machine. So this particular machine that I looked at was built around an Intel Haswell-based Core i7 low-voltage processor. The specific model was the Core i7 4500U. Now, though it's a Core i7, that's actually a dual-core chip. It had 8 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte hybrid drive, so part flash, part hard drive, running Windows 8, in this nice 21.5-inch form factor, completely self-contained. And unlike most all-in-one PCs, there's also a battery inside. So you could use this like any other all-in-one desktop machine. You have your 21-inch, 21.5-inch screen in front of you. Comes with a wireless mouse and keyboard. Remind me to show you the mouse because it's absolutely horrible. And you could use it like any other machine. You have 10-point multi-touch. But because there's a battery inside, you could unplug the power cord and take it anywhere. It's been absolutely great for me. Like, one use case that this machine has been really fun is with my little kids. My girls will come in after preschool and they want to, play a Nemo game, play a touch game. And sometimes I'm in the middle of some hardcore work and I can't have them making too much noise next to me. I can unplug it, go stick it on the ottoman in the next room, and it'll, run for a few hours on battery. It's really, really cool.
Like I said, it runs a few hours on battery. Now, you did say it's running an i7. It's a mobile processor, though. I mean, it's a large machine. I'm pretty sure they could put a hefty battery in there. Why do you think they didn't bother going with a desktop class processor, other than the fact, I know it's going to eat up battery, but it seems like if you're going to have this as a tabletop PC, why not go all the way?
So you actually do have the options. The machines start at $999. The model I tested was about $1299 as configured. You can throw larger SSDs and higher performance processors in there as well as options. I believe they had they even had an Iris Pro option, so a high-end Core i7 with Iris Pro graphics were an option, which would be really, really cool. I think the machine I tested was sort of hit a sweet spot because even though it's a dual core, it's got hyperthreading, so 2 cores, 4 threads, and it can turbo up to 3 gigahertz. So it can hit those low power states and get decent battery life. But when you need performance, it's there. I never really felt myself saying this machine feels slow. Now, if you look through the benchmarks in the full review, it doesn't really compete well with lots of higher-end all-in-ones. But that doesn't explain the experience. And the experience was actually really good. Touch response is good. Navigating through Windows 8 is good. Web browsing is good. It's not a game machine, but it can handle casual games, no problem. Anything in the Windows Store or online is no issue at all. Plays videos great. The speakers are surprisingly good for such a small machine. And it's really a beautiful machine. I had some experience with the Tap 20, last year's slightly smaller version. And it was kind of had some weird curves. It was a weird color white with like bumps in the back. I had some software issues. It never even made it through a full review process. The Tap 21 is as good an all-in-one in this class as I've used. It's really nice. The major drawback are the input devices. I'm a keyboard snob, so I really dislike the small keyboard. But this little beauty right here, this mouse, is just horrible. For a big paw like mine, it not only is it's too small, but it's sort of this pointy tic-tac kind of shape. I can't say enough bad things about the mouse. It's just not a good mouse. But, you know, it's got touch, so you can get by with touch.
Hey, yeah, I just noticed. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so I was going to say that Sony is, you know, they've always been revered for their style. I mean, Apple loves style and Sony loves style. And then you see that mouse, that looks like an Apple mouse. And Apple mice are the worst freaking input devices you could get. They haven't made a good one since, I don't know, Apple II. So, like, it's been garbage. That little sliver looking thing you had, I could not imagine that being a fun experience whatsoever. But it does have Bluetooth. Dave, you were going to say something. What were you up to?
I was just perusing his review, and I was blown away. I got to the power consumption page. This thing under load consumes 50 watts, and it's a 21-inch panel.
Yeah, that's what's nuts. You know, LED backlit panel. So this, you know, Core i7 full machine with screen is consuming probably half as much power as the light bulb above your head.
Yeah, and it's idles at 27 watts. It just blows me away. No wonder you can, you know, pick this up and take it anywhere. That's pretty cool.
I liked it. I dug the machine. It's definitely going to be my my 4-year-old's first computer.
I keep tripping breakers with my two giant Dell monitors and Mac Pro. Maybe I should just get 2 of those because it seems to use less power than my old technology of my monitors with the giant fluorescent tubes in the back.
Yeah,
it's one way to get a tan. One way to get a tan in the winter.
Or radiation on the other. I think, yeah, so if you guys are wondering, hey, these stories and these performance benchmarks and all this stuff we're talking about, that stuff's all available at hothardware.com, right, guys?
Yeah, and actually, I want to show you one more thing before you start going to that sign-off thing. So, see this? Marco mentioned the Iris Pro graphics. So this is the Gigabyte Bricks. It is the evolution of the NUC, the Intel NUC, the next unit of computing. But it's the Gigabyte Bricks by Gigabyte, and it has a Haswell processor on board. This is what I've got in the lab coming next week, and it has Iris Pro graphics. So this is the highest end integrated graphics core that Intel sports in their Haswell line with embedded DRAM on chip. So should be very interesting to see what this puppy can do, and would make for a really nice home theater PC, no? Huh? Yeah.
I'm staring at it like I want that. Okay. Yeah, if I'm sure you could see my video at the time Dave was showing that, I'm like,
he's getting misty, yeah.
So I saw those machines really, really early when Gigabyte showed them to me out at IDF, and they had like a whole slew that was coming last year, and we were having dinner and drinks afterwards at another event, and I don't want to tell you with the headline that I came up with for them, how they should market them, but it had the word bricks in it.
Oh, come on.
Gigabyte's latest small form factor tech will make you bleep bricks.
Or make them
I like that.
Bricks. I like that's good. That's good. So that's going to be coming up. There's going to be a review of that at hothardware.com. But you guys are all over the web still, everywhere. If you watch the video version of this, because there's only a video version of this, you've seen the YouTube page, youtube.com/hothardwarevids. Is that still correct?
Yes, sir.
Or that changed?
It is.
Still
Indeed.
correct.
No, that's the one.
If you like short headlines, there's always twitter.com/hothardware. If you like socialness, if you like blue, because obviously you like blue because this is Hot Hardware. Facebook also uses blue. Facebook.com/hothardware. And now is the news about the Google Plus page. Dave, take it away.
Yes, we have Google Plus Hot Hardware. Google Plus /Hot Hardware. It's for real. The vanity URL has been given to us, and we're not giving it back.
Isn't it plus.google.com/plus Hot Hardware?
I'm going to pull it up right now.
It's
plus.google.com/plus Hot Hardware.
Yeah, it's not our fault. That's the URL. That's just the way Google Plus works. It's plus.google.com/ the actual plus sign, and then your vanity. So don't mess that up, folks.
Yes.
I think that pretty much wraps it up for us, except, is there any contests going on? Because you guys always give away stuff. Like the fun thing, we provide you a show and we give away free stuff, or at least these guys do. I just give you nothing. But go ahead.
Yeah, we're like Santa Claus 24/7 around here. It's amazing. So we probably will be getting a sweepstakes together. We are thinking that it's most likely going to be something in the small form factor PC realm, maybe a small form factor gaming PC. We're not sure yet. We're going to partner with a manufacturer of our choice who shall remain nameless for now, but we're lining some things up. Marco, do we probably have something on tap that we can probably disclose in the next episode, maybe, huh?
Hopefully by then. Think high-end mini ITX desktop system.
Interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you guys can speculate all you want, and we should thank our friends at gfqnetwork.com. Today's episode was produced and live streamed. We haven't live streamed in a really long time, but this show is going to be live streamed weekly, I believe, at gfqlive.tv. So we have a chat room. We got folks asking us questions and also playing I Spy in my office because my office is a mess. And now that we have a live stream, I need to make sure it's nice and neat. On top of that, if you guys don't know about GFQ Network, it's the guys from Queens Network. I'm a guy from Queens. I've been working with these guys for all of 3-4 weeks because I happen to like them. So I'd like to thank them for producing the show. Check out their huge library of programs at gfqnetwork.com. It's if you like tech, they've got tech. If you like pro wrestling, they've got shows about pro wrestling. All kinds of huge range of stuff over at GFQ. Also, my new show. I do a show there about the quest for peace. You guys believe I'm trying to find inner peace? You guys have known me for a while. Could you believe that this guy wants to be happy?
I'm not going to answer the question.
No, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that.
I just loved watching your guys' smiles as I said that. It was like, what?
I take that back. You always seem happy to me. I'm sure everybody's got their cross to bear, but you always project happiness and have a good attitude. So whatever you're searching for, I hope you find it. But to me, you're always a happy, cool guy.
Marco, the sweetest.
My gosh.
I think that does it for us. Thanks for stopping by.